Baik, halo, selamat welcome dan selamat datang. Good afternoon, selamat siang kepada Bapak Ibu sekalian yang sudah bergabung bersama webinar kita pada siang yang indah ini. Selamat datang. Eh, di Shield Virtual 2021 Cyber Security and IAM Online Seminar. Untuk webinar kita hari ini akan terasa sangat spesial karena ada dua tim dari Manage Engine langsung yang akan membawakan materi webinar kita. Ada Mr. Vivin dan Mr. Haris yang akan membawakan webinar kita pada siang ini. Jadi akan terasa sangat akan terasa langsung, tapi seluruh sesi yang dibawakan mereka tentunya akan dibawakan dalam bahasa Inggris. Baik, sebelum kita memulai materi webinar kita, izinkan saya berikan waktu sampai 5 menit saja untuk memberikan pesan-pesan dari sponsor. Selamat siang, salam kenal. Nama saya Roni Simatupang. Saya dari Product System Technology, merupakan on behalf partner Manage Engine untuk Indonesia. Ini beberapa tim yang ada di belakang Prodata yang siap untuk membantu Bapak Ibu sekalian untuk solusi-solusi dari Manage Engine. Sekilas mengenai Manage Engine, ya. Manage Engine itu didirikan tahun 2006, dulu namanya Advanet, sekarang dikenal dengan Zoho Corporation. Pada dasarnya ada 3 core bisnis yang dimiliki saat ini. Yang pertama adalah IAM, Telekom Bisnis, kemudian Manage Engine yang akan kita coba diskusikan hari ini, dan juga ada Zoho Cloud atau Zoho CRM atau Zoho SaaS, Software as a Service. Kemudian untuk Manage Engine sendiri memiliki lebih dari 90 produk yang bisa Bapak Ibu gunakan, sudah digunakan dari 3 juta IT users, kemudian sudah dipakai di 190 negara. Kalau kita bisa lihat di layar ada beberapa company yang sudah menggunakan Manage Engine hingga saat ini. Sementara untuk Prodata sendiri, kita berpartnership dengan Manage Engine sudah sejak lama, sejak tahun 2004. Kita sudah partner dengan Manage Engine, sampai saat ini kita ditunjuk sebagai on behalf Manage Engine di Indonesia. Tentunya sebagai on behalf Manage Engine Indonesia, kita wajib memiliki resource, didukung juga oleh support, konsultasi, training, sertifikasi dari Manage Engine. Ini beberapa company yang sudah menggunakan Manage Engine di Indonesia. Menurut data yang kami miliki, sudah ada 400 hingga 500 company yang sudah menggunakan Manage Engine hingga saat ini. Dan sebagai syarat untuk sebagai on behalf partner Manage Indonesia, tentunya kita memiliki layanan ProCare atau local support, dan juga kita menyediakan layanan untuk enterprise market, di mana format atau struktur implementasi kita senantiasa kita perbaiki dari waktu ke waktu, hingga ke level managed service yang kita berikan untuk memberikan implementasi yang baik ke semua customer management ini. Baik, untuk Manage Engine sendiri sebenarnya produknya cukup banyak. Kalau misalnya Bapak Ibu lihat bisa di browsing di internet ya, cukup banyak. Tapi kita memberikan beberapa klasifikasi. Yang pertama itu adalah IT Operation Management. Di mana dalam IT Operation Management ini kita bisa memonitoring network dan server dengan OP Manager. Kemudian traffic bandwidth monitoring kita bisa lakukan dengan Network Analyzer. Sementara untuk server dan aplikasi kita bisa monitoring dengan Application Manager. Nah, dan dalam item ini kita terkenal dengan simple but powerful ya, di mana kita 100% web based, agentless monitoring, kemudian multi vendor monitoring. It means kita tidak menuliskan brand-brand tertentu, as long as dia punya SNMP itu biasanya kita bisa monitoring. Kemudian kita juga sudah bisa diinstal ya atas Windows ataupun Linux. Kemudian kita juga punya solusi yang berhubungan dengan ITSM atau IT Service Management. Di Manage Engine kami kenal dengan Service Desk Plus, di mana dalam Service Desk Plus ini sudah komplit helpdesk ticketing. Kita integrasikan dengan sistem asset management yang sudah ready ITL versi yang terbaru atau versi 4. Nah, dalam Service Desk Plus Detector itu seperti saya jelaskan di awal tadi, kita sudah complete solution di mana sistem IT helpdesk itu sudah didukung dengan asset management dan juga ITL modul tadi. Sementara untuk desktop, kita punya solusi yang berhubungan dengan desktop dan mobile device management. Manage ini kita kenal desktop sentral, Atau untuk MDM-nya ada Mobile Device Manager Plus. Di dalam desktop sentral ini kita bisa memanage secara 100% untuk seluruh desktop yang ada di network kita. Dari PC yang berhubungan dengan baik PC itu Windows, Mac, ataupun Linux. Untuk mobile device kita support untuk Windows Phone, Android, dan juga iOS. Kita bisa kontrol 100%, kita bisa manage mereka, patching, software development, dan lain-lain. Nah, sementara untuk Active Directory Management, kita ada beberapa produk yang mungkin nanti akan kita gali sedikit lebih dalam bersama Pak Vivian dan Haris nanti di solusi Active Directory ini. Bagaimana cara kita memanage Active Directory kita secara lebih mudah, kemudian mengaudit seluruh aktivitas yang ada di Active Directory kita hingga ke level file server dan member server mungkin, sampai ke level reset password secara mandiri oleh user-user. Nanti kita akan bahas lebih dalam lagi mengenai Active Directory ini. Kita juga punya modul-modul yang berhubungan dengan IT Security Management. Kita punya solusi IAM dan juga Event Log Analyzer, mana kita bisa mengkolek seluruh log-log yang ada di seluruh perangkat atau log resource yang ada di network kita, sehingga kita bisa mengidentifikasi dan juga mengaudit seluruh aktivitas yang ada baik di server, aplikasi, ataupun network device yang kita miliki saat ini. Dan terakhir kita punya solusi yang berhubungan dengan BI, Business Intelligence, itu namanya Analytics Plus, mana kita bisa meng-compile dan mengintegrasikan seluruh resource aplikasi yang kita miliki, baik managed engine ataupun non-managed engine. Kita integrasikan dengan alat Analytics Plus untuk memunculkan sebuah report yang lebih mudah dibaca dan lebih mudah dimengerti. Baik, sekian sedikit mengenai managed engine, Prodata, dan juga beberapa produk yang ada di managed engine. Terima kasih atas perhatian Bapak Ibu sekalian. Kita akan memulai sesi webinar kita yang dimulai dengan dari Pak Vivit. Nanti jika ada pertanyaan yang berhubungan dengan materi webinar kita kali ini, nanti bisa langsung lampirkan di modul chat yang ada di layar Bapak Ibu sekalian. Terima kasih atas waktunya. Thank you, everybody. Now we will start the webinar. Start with Pak Vivit. Go ahead, Vivit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ronnie. Thank you very much for the introduction. So let me quickly share my screen. Just give me one quick second. All right. I hope all of you can see my screen and my voice is okay. I just need a thumbs up. Oh, okay, good. All right. Even before we proceed for the session, I would like to cut the video feed now because I don't want the video feed to be eating up so much of my bandwidth. So soon after my session, I have my good friend and colleague Harish. Hi Harish. So Harish will be talking about IT security and I will be talking about identity and access management. So just wait for a couple of seconds. So I'll cut the video feed and then we'll start the session. All right. I hope my voice is still loud and clear. Let's get started with the session. First things first, thank you very much for setting some time apart amidst your busy schedule. I know Indonesia as a country is going through the pandemic. So I just hope and pray that things ease up a bit there for you. So just hold on for a couple of weeks and things will get all right. I just wanted to pass this message on. Okay. So as I mentioned, we have two sessions today. One is on identity and access management, and the second one is going to be on IT security, right? Now, my name is Vivin Satyan. I have been with Manage Engine for more than 9 years now. So I do two things as a technology consultant. One is I talk about products and I also talk about technology, okay? Now, in today's session, for the next 30 to 40 minutes, we will be talking about identity management, okay? Now, initially, the whole idea of identity management was just authentication and authorization. Now, authentication is understanding who is who. Authorization is after understanding who is who, you'll have to let people access certain resources within your infrastructure. You'll have to restrict them access to certain resources, right? So allowing or denying users access to resources is what is authorization, right? Now, the whole idea of identity and access management was just these two concepts. But over these years, what has happened is Identity and access management has now included or has now onboarded a variety of functions. Let me give you some of the core functions. For example, when a new employee is recruited to an organization, you'll have to create an account for that employee. Okay, that is the onboarding phase. Now, for an effective onboarding or user management experience, your IAM software should be able to integrate with a variety of business applications through API integration. Okay, this is also one of the core parameters while you actually procure an IAM solution. How good is your IAM solution in talking to other business applications? Number three is its core function. What are the authentication techniques that are available in my IAM solution, right? Is it just username and password, or TOTP, biometrics, smart card authentication? What are the authentication factors that my IAM solution support? Number four is self-service. If my users forget their passwords or if they get their accounts locked out, okay, so how are they going to perform these operations on a self-service basis, okay, thereby reducing the number of help desk calls and tickets. Fifth function is offboarding. Similar to onboarding, when the employee, when the employee leaves the organization, the account needs to be handled. All the permissions that you have given to the user has to be revoked. So that's an offboarding experience. So how effective is going to be the offboarding experience when you have an IAM solution? Okay, that is again one of the key parameters while choosing an IAM solution. Okay, and the sixth function is delegation. Okay, delegation is something like you as an administrator want let's say want your subordinate to generate reports, or you want them to manage licenses of your users. Okay, so you as an administrator delegate some of the actions to them. Okay, so how effective is that delegation? That's the whole idea. And the seventh topic, or the seventh parameter when it comes to an IAM solution, is analytics, right? And my good friend Harish is going to be talking about analytics in his session. So analytics, there are two types of analytics. One is general analytics. Number two is risk-based analytics. Okay, so Harish will be talking more about risk-based analytics in his session. Okay, so I just want you to pay close attention to the sessions. All right, so let's get started here. The agenda is going to be pretty simple. So what I'm going to show you now is I am going to show you how an IAM solution from ManageEngine, namely AD360, is going to help you perform all the all the functions that I just discussed. Okay, we are going to take a look at IAM and then see how IAM helps us in standardizing the user onboarding process, in the sense, how are we going to create users successfully? How are we going to create users in multiple platforms? Because companies don't just have Active Directory anymore. They have Active Directory, they have Exchange, they have Microsoft 365. So you need to create an account in all these technology platforms. So we're going to take a look at the user onboarding experience from the IAM perspective. Number two is, how do you offboard users when the employees leave the organization? How is an IAM solution going to help you handle that? Number three is all about delegation. And I'm going to be talking about a specific concept of delegation. And that is, so instead of actually delegating control or authority, how are we going to delegate, just actions to other users? Okay. Number four is all about authentication. Okay, so you have your username and password. That is level one of authentication. The second level of authentication would be, let's say, a TOTP, or a one-time password sent to your mobile number, or it could be a smart card authentication, RSA-based authentication. So how are we going to secure layer one and layer two of authentication is what we're going to be focusing on points 4 and 5. Okay, so user onboarding, user offboarding, delegation, and how do we strengthen authentication is going to be what we're going to be discussing over the next 30 minutes. Okay, all right. Now for that, I am going to be using a solution from ManageEngine called AD360. Okay, so I'm going to show you how AD360 from Manage Engine is going to help you do all these functions that you see on the screen. Okay, number one, onboarding users. The first function that I'd like to discuss with you is onboarding users. And whenever you're trying to create an account, okay, be it an Active Directory account, or let's say a Microsoft 365 account, or you're trying to create an Exchange mailbox for the user, okay, for the first time, you would want to have a multi-platform onboarding experience. In that sense, what do I mean is, when you're trying to create an account, you would want that account to be present in as many technology platforms as possible. It's not like you create an account here and then you go to Exchange server, open the EMC, create a mailbox there, open up your G Suite console, create an account here, and then you go to the admin portal and you create an account here. So we are not talking about 4 or 5 different portals. We're just talking about one application that can help you do user creation in all these technology platforms. Okay. And let me quickly introduce you to the framework that actually helps you do that. Okay. Let me quickly jump to my lab and show you the actual template so that we understand this better. Okay. Now, as you can see on the screen, this is AD Manager Plus. Okay. Now, please hear me out right. AD Manager Plus is just one of the many modules that you have in AD 360. Okay. Let me again repeat. I was talking about, AD 360, right? So AD Manager Plus is just a one module of AD 360. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to the management tab of AD Manager Plus, and I'm going to show you how the template helps you in creating user accounts in multiple technology platforms, namely Active Directory, Microsoft 365, Exchange, and G Suite. Okay. So I open up user creation templates here, right? So I open up user creation templates, and I have already created a template for you because I have 3 important concepts to explain in a template. Okay. Now, first, let me show you a regular template. Okay. So I just go to create a new template here. Okay. And when you go to create a new template, you get a fresh template. Okay. So you as an administrator can fill in all the values that you want. The values in the general tab, the account tab. The account tab is where you type the user's password information, the groups that the user should be a member of. And then you have the contact tab. The contact tab is for the contact information of the employee. Okay. The home, phone number, mobile phone number, the title, department, and everything. So you have a tab for every parameter that you can think of. Okay. So this is a regular template. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to explain 3 features here that you see on the screen: copy user attributes, enable drag and drop, and creation rules. And I'm going to show you how these 3 features make this template all the more powerful. Okay. So let's now go back to the template that I've already created so that I'll be able to explain some concepts to you. Okay. Now I've already created a template and I've named it HR-user creation template. Now, if you take a closer look at this template, okay, you will see that the general tab alone is highlighted, whereas the account, contact, exchange, remote mailbox, all of these are grayed out. Okay. And inside the general tab, you have first name, last name, and title field highlighted, whereas the rest of the fields are grayed out. Okay. You know why? Because this template is going to be used not by the administrators. This is going to be used by my HR. Okay. So when the HR is using this template, I don't want them to see all the fields here because it is not relevant for them. I just want them to be able to see a simple form, and that form will only have first name, last name, and title. Okay. Now, how do I do that? What about the other fields then? Okay. So if I just type the first name, last name, and title, and I hit create as a HR, will the account be created in AD, Exchange, and Office 365? The answer is yes. Okay. And I'm going to show you exactly how this is done. Okay. So what I do here is, as an administrator, when I'm actually designing a template for the HR, the first feature that I use here is creation rules. Okay. So what I do here is, when I go to creation rules, I create any number of rules that I want. Okay. I just go to add rule, and I create any number of rules that I want. Okay, and every rule that you see here, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 rules here. And every row, every rule works based on a condition. Okay, rule number 1 is if the technician is going to be an IT technician account. If the new employee that I have recruited to my office, if it's an IT technician, then what is the rules condition? If it's an IT admin, what's the rules condition? If it's a database administrator, I have different set of rules. If it's a procurement user, so it's going to be there's going to be a different set of rules. Okay, so let me explain the rules here. So when I actually open up the IT technician account, the condition is the title of that newly recruited employee. If it's going to be IT technician, then I want certain values to be automatically assigned, auto-assigned for this user account, okay? Such as their description, the groups, the city, the department, the street address, office, country, everything. I want all these, even the manager, I want them to be auto-populated. Everything is based on this title, okay? Now, this is for IT technician. What if it's an IT admin? Well, if the title is going to be IT admin, this is another rule, then I want different sets of values to be assigned to that IT admin, okay? So every user department or every user account that I create, based on their job titles, they will be assigned different values, okay? That is the whole idea of creation rules here, okay? I hope we got this point clear. So creation rules is all about logic, okay? So if the HR is going to select the title as help desk technician, there's going to be a different set of values. If it is going to be HR manager, there's going to be a different set of values. If it is IT admin Spain, the user will be getting a different set of values. So all the HR has to do is just type the first name of the new employee, last name of the new employee, and select the right title or the relevant title here. You can add or remove any number of titles as you want, okay? Manager, manager, HR. So based on the titles that the HR selects, the creation rules will be applied and the user account will be created in Active Directory, in Exchange, in Office 365, and even in G Suite. Okay, so that's creation rules here. Now coming to the second feature, which is enable drag and drop. Okay, now I told you that the whole layout, when you actually give this form to the HR should only be able to see 3 fields, right? And the HR should not be able to see all of the fields because it is not relevant to the HR. So how do you make certain fields visible and how do you make certain fields hidden from the HR's view? Well, that is when you use enable drag and drop. So you go to enable drag and drop, okay? And you can completely customize this layout, okay? So you can add a field, or if you feel that you don't need the field, okay? So I've just added employee ID, and if you feel that you don't need employee ID here, you simply delete the field, okay? So now the employee ID field is back here in what we call the field tray. So for every tab, you can add or remove or rename fields and even make it mandatory, okay? So this is how you can customize this layout using enable drag and drop functionality, okay? And copy user attributes is very simple. So if you want to build a template from scratch, and if you already have a user, okay, let's say you're trying to create a template for the IT department and you already have an IT user, you can simply copy the IT user's property and paste it in this template, okay? That makes your job of creating templates a lot easier. Okay, so I hope we now have clear understanding of the 3 features. Creation rules is logic, enable drag and drop is for customization, copy user attributes is for copying a target user's property, right? So now I'm going to show you how this template is going to be, how this template looks from the HR's standpoint, okay? So when the HR uses this template, according to our design, the HR should only be able to see the first name, last name, and the title field, okay? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do exactly that, okay? So I'm going to sign out, okay? I've now logged in as the admin, so I'm going to sign out. And I am going to log into AD Manager Plus as the HR. Okay, HR, and I am going to type the password. Please note that this is the Windows username and password of this HR user. Okay, so the HR now logs into AD Manager Plus. And let us assume that today morning I recruited a new employee to my office, and now the HR has to create an account for the newly recruited employee. Okay, so the HR now logs into AD Manager Plus. The HR goes to create a single user. Okay, and when the HR goes to create a single user, the template that we had auto assigned is right there. Okay, HR-user creation is right there. Even if the HR tries to select another template, no other templates will be listed here as per definition. Okay, and now let us see whether the user is whether the HR is able to create new user accounts. Okay, just by logging into just by logging into AD Manager. Okay, the HR is not logging into a server. The HR is not using an admin center. The HR is just, okay. So the first name of the user is Ronnie, and the last name, let's say, Techie. Okay. So the first name is Ronnie and the last name is Techie. And now, out of all the titles that are available, since this is going to be a technician account, okay, I'm going to select the title as IT technician. Okay. So first name Ronnie, last name Techie, and the title is IT technician. The title is mandatory so that the HR will not be able to skip the process. Okay. Please note I've still logged into the application as the HR. Okay. So I hit create. Okay. Successfully created the user. Ronnie Techie is created, and the account is created in the India OU. Okay. Now what we are going to do is we are going to open up Active Directory. Okay, this is Active Directory, and I'm going to the India OU here. Okay, and let us see whether we have the user Ronnie Techie created. Okay, so I just do a quick refresh. Okay, I do a quick refresh, and I have Ronnie Techie here. And if I open up the user's property, I just don't have the first name, last name, and the title, but I have all the properties that I want populated for the user, including the office address and also the group membership of the account. Okay, but all the HR had typed is the first name, last name, and title. But if you take a look at the user's property here, every attribute is populated. Now, this is exactly the power of the template, the user creation template that I showed you. So let me make it very clear. The user creation template can help the administrators create accounts in any department for any job role. It can also help the HR create accounts with minimal information, such as the first name, last name, and title. Okay. The HR need not know what is the password. The HR need not know what is the Office 365 license. All they have to do is just select the title. So based on the title that they select, the right license, the right group membership, the right access levels will be given to the users, and the user accounts will be readily created in all the platforms. Okay. So this is the benefit of using AD Manager Plus's template. Okay, so I'm going to quickly sign out, and I'm going to now show you another feature here. So far we have talked about onboarding users. Okay, and I've explained the 3 important features in the template. Now I'm going to show you the concept of delegation and how it is done. Okay, so just give me a quick second here. I'm now going to log into AD Manager Plus as the admin. I'm now logging into AD Manager Plus as the admin. So I've already showed you 2 things. I've showed you what are the core features in the template, and I've also showed you how can you map this template to your HR so that the HR can create users just by typing in basic information like first name, last name, and the title of the user. Okay. Now I'm going to introduce you to the concept of delegation. Okay. Now, what I've done here is, So I have this user called the HR user. Okay. Now this user does not have any rights in my Active Directory or Office 365 or Exchange. Okay. This is a regular, this is a normal HR account. And if you take a look at the permissions in the form of group membership, the HR is just part of domain users. That's it. Okay. But you just saw the HR account logging into AD Manager Plus, and the same HR account created this user called Ronnie Tech, right? Without logging into Active Directory. Now, how did this happen? Well, what I've done here is I go to delegation and I have added HR as a technician of AD Manager Plus, okay? And I have given this HR a role, and I've also mapped a template. I'll explain what is a role and I'll show you how to map a template, okay? Now, let me make it very clear. So I am not giving the HR direct access to my Active Directory. I'm not giving them direct access to Exchange or Office 365. All I'm doing is I've added them as technicians and I've given them a role called the HR role inside of AD Manager Plus. Okay. Now let me talk about roles here. Now roles are nothing but actions that you can delegate to other users. Other users can be administrators, they can be HR, they can be line managers, they can even be your IT technicians. Okay. So you can create a new role and then select the actions that you want to map. But let me actually open the HR role that I just created. Okay. So the HR role, when the role opens up, you will be able to see a bunch of checkboxes. Every checkbox corresponds to an action. Okay. So for example, create single user as an action and you have a checkbox for that. Similarly, for every action, you would have a corresponding checkbox here. Okay. The actions don't just limit themselves to Active Directory. It also extends to GPO management, reporting, administration, and even Office 365. Okay. So it all depends on what action do you want to enable in this role. That's the whole idea here. Now, I have just selected only one checkbox, which is create a single user for my HR. Okay. No reports. We have more than 200 reports here. Reports on users, reports on passwords, reports on groups. Okay. So no reports, no administration capabilities, nothing related to Office 365 reporting, and no ability to backup or recovery. Okay. However, you can give a user the ability to do all this. Okay. But for the HR, it's just creates a single user. Okay. Now, after creating a role, what you should be doing is you simply go to add new technician and then add the HR as a part of AD Manager Plus. Okay. And simply map the role. It is as simple as that. Okay. So the domain that we are working on is vcorp.com, because vcorp.com is where the HR is. And by default, I have given the HR the ability to create users in all OUs. If you want, you can even restrict the HR's access to one or maybe two OUs, whichever you seem fit. Okay. And then we'll have to select a role. Okay. So you can pick and choose from the built-in roles, or you can select the role that you created. HR role is something that I created. Okay. I've just selected that role. Okay. And now that this role is going to be creating users, you should obviously be assigning a template, right? So when you go to the template section, the pop-up will show you all the templates that you have. We have close to 50 templates. I don't want the HR to be able to see or use those 50 templates. I want the template to be used, the HR to be using one specific template, which is HR-user creation. And how do I make this template as default? Well, you see a small checkbox here. Okay, the small checkbox reads set as default, which means I have selected only one template, and that will be the default template for the HR account. Now, if you want a few other templates to be visible for your HR, all you need to do is just select the templates. Okay. So I hope we are clear with the concept of delegation here. Okay. Delegation is pretty simple. All you need to do, step number 1 is create a role. A role can be any action. Step number 2 is after creating a role, you'll have to actually add the technician as a part of AD Manager Plus and then assign the role. Okay. You'll even be able to audit the actions done by your technician. For example, okay, the HR technician just created a user called Ronnie Techie, right? And the action was done, let's say 5 or 10 minutes ago. So let's see whether the audit report section captures all that. Okay, so the audit report section, I select the help desk technician here. So the technician that we are talking about is the HR user. And I would like to audit the action done by the HR in the last 1 hour. Okay. When I hit go, it says the HR user has created a single user. Okay. And the name of the user is Ronnie Tech. And you have the timestamp of the action. And the user was successfully created. And if you want to know the details, you just hit the details link and you get complete information about the user. So Ronnie Techie was created by the HR, and these are the properties of the account. Okay, so this is what we call as effective onboarding experience. Okay, so you create a user, or your HR creates a user in Active Directory, in Exchange, in Office 365, just by logging into AD Manager Plus. So you actually reduce the number of people who have access to your servers. That is what we call as effective delegation. Okay, the HR's right in Active Directory does not change. The HR is still part of, if you open up the HR's property, the HR is still part of domain users, but the HR through AD Manager Plus is now able to create accounts and do the tasks that you want them to do. Okay. The third action, so the first one was all about templates, second one was all about delegation. Now I'm going to be talking about automation. Okay, because we get a lot of questions, like can this application automate the process of user creation, user deletion, or finding out inactive users or inactive computers automatically? Okay, not manually, but automatically. One thing that I'd like to say is AD Manager Plus can manually create accounts, manage accounts, but it can also automatically do that. Okay, so if you go to create a new automation, okay, now we have 4 categories of automation: user, computer, group, and contact. Let's talk about user automation here. You can pick and choose any task that you want that's to be automated. For example, okay, you can automate the process of creating users. So let's say you want 3 users to be created next Monday, okay, at 10 o'clock. You simply set an automation saying create users and then give the input. It can be a CSV file. And then you tell the application when to create those accounts. The accounts will be created. Okay, I hope I have made my point clear here. Okay, so this is one functionality here. So you simply select the task that you want to automate. You select the source. The source can be a CSV file. It can be an SQL server, Oracle database, or it can be any one of these business applications that you're using. Okay, so the application has the ability to integrate with variety of business tools so that it can get input and then automate the tasks that you want. Okay, you can create users automatically, modify users, reset their password. If you just scroll down, you get a list of actions that you can pick and choose from. Okay, for example, let's say an employee leaves the organization and the employee has been consuming an Office 365 license. You can automatically remove the license from the user who has just left the organization. Okay, through automation. Okay, so you can pick and choose the automation task and just select the source and select the frequency of automation, whether you want the automation to happen daily, weekly, monthly, and the application will do it for you. And after every action takes place, irrespective of the outcome, whether it's a success or a failure, you simply can enable notification So you get an SMS as well as an email notification. Okay, so if the automation has created 5 users, you want an SMS notification to be sent as soon as the task is completed. The notification template will help you do that. Okay, so we are talking about a complete automation procedure here for your AD, Exchange, and Office 365. Okay. Now it's time for me to switch to a different topic altogether. Okay, we are now going to be talking about authentication here. Okay, so far we've discussed about 3 topics. Number 1 is we talked about templates and how do you use the templates for creating accounts. Number 2, we discussed about how do you actually delegate an action to other user. Number 3, we discussed about automation. Okay, I really hope that we are clear with all these 3 concepts. And if you have questions, please make use of the chat box and keep asking your questions. Okay, I'm going to spend just 5 more minutes here and talk about authentication real quick. Okay, so let me do something here. Now that most of us are still working from our homes, and it looks like it's going to be continuing for some more weeks at least. So what we have to do now is the number 1 thing that we'll have to safeguard is your users' credentials. Okay, because the users' credentials are basically the key to accessing the data in your organization. So if someone gets hold of the username and password of maybe your admin accounts or your privileged users, what that means is they get access to your entire information repository. Okay, so in 2021, if you are going to be rethinking your password strategy or your authentication strategy, you'll have to have 3 things in mind. Number 1 is you'll have to secure remote logon attempts. Okay, because people are working from home, which is people are working remotely. So you'll have to secure their local and remote login attempts. Okay, not just to their computers, not just to their computer back in office, but also to servers. Okay, because you will have to have a measure, or you'll have to have a way by which you actually identify who's trying to log in and access what. Number 2, when you are going to define a password policy or an authentication mechanism that you're trying to implement, please see that the policy actually helps you defend against credential-based attacks. Okay, even yesterday there was a ransomware attack, and a part of that ransomware attack had to do with a weak credential. Okay, so there was an attack in almost 12 countries by the same group, and part of that attack was because of a weak credential. Okay, so you'll have to defend your usernames and passwords against common credential-based attacks. Number 3, depending on the regulatory compliance that your country or region has to follow, you will have to define your password parameters accordingly. Okay, it can be GDPR, HIPAA, or any compliance that you see here. So 3 tips or 3 items that you should be focusing on in order to secure your users' credentials. You'll have to think about a mechanism by which you secure remote logons. You'll have to think about a way by which the usernames and passwords do not fall for credential-based attacks. And the password policy that you set should also be, following regular should be abiding by the rules of regulatory bodies, okay, depending on the region or the country that you are in. And AD360 again has another module which will help you, help you save or help you secure your users' credentials in 2 stages. Okay, so now I'm going to be talking about 2 stages of securing user credential. Number 1, you'll have to secure your user's password or strengthen your user's password. Okay, that is layer 1 of security. Layer 2 of security is after strengthening your user's password policy, you will also have to think about a multi-factor authentication technique that you are going to impose to your users. Okay, now AD360 can help you in these 2 parameters. Okay, let me quickly show you AD 360 here. Now, AD Self-Service Plus is another module of AD 360. So AD Manager Plus is one module, which will help you with user creation, automation, delegation, reporting, and all that. AD Self-Service Plus is a different module altogether. Okay. Now I'm going to show you two ways by which AD 360 or AD Self-Service can help you secure your user's credential. Let's focus on layer one. Layer one is all about password security or strengthening your existing passwords. Okay. Now, I kindly request the administrators listening to this session to pay attention to these two layers of user credentials. Okay. So how do you strengthen your passwords? Layer two is how do you apply a multi-factor authentication technique that is based on a certain logic. Okay. So I go to configuration here, and I go to password policy enforcer. Okay, this is layer one of security. Okay, so layer one of security is all about strengthening passwords. Okay, now for example, we have 4 types of restrictions that you can impose on a password. Okay, one is character-based restriction. Number 2 is repetition-based restriction, pattern-based, and length-based restriction. Now these restrictions will help you in actually defending against credential-based attacks. So point 2 is taken care of here. Okay, so let me repeat: repetitions based on characters. Restrictions based on characters, restrictions based on repetition, so that you disallow users from using the same password. Restrictions based on pattern. So let's say you don't want your users to be using, let's say, QWERTY, 1234, or password at 12345 as their passwords. You can very well, define the patterns that you don't want them to use, and you can actually help them strengthen their passwords. Okay, so 4 different types of restrictions that you can impose on passwords. And the best part about this is everything is bundled as a policy here. Okay, and you can map this policy to any user in your infrastructure. You can map this maybe based on map this password policy based on their job description. Okay, so you can create a password policy and map this policy just for your administrators. Okay, and maybe create another policy and map it just for your regular users. Okay, and create another password policy with different types of restrictions here and map it for your contract employees. Okay, so we are securing level 1 using something called password policy enforcer. Okay, and it's not like you'll have to have one policy and then map it for all your users. We are talking about job description or title based or role based policy, password policy strengthening here. Okay, so layer 1 is taken care of. Layer 2 is multi-factor authentication. Okay, this is layer 2. How do you secure your user's credential? So we have now talked about layer 1 of credential security. So layer 2 of credential security is by enabling or enforcing multi-factor authentication. And just to let you know, in order to secure the layer 2 of your user's credential, AD Self-Service gives you at least 17 different authentication techniques that you can pick and choose from, including the traditional security question and answers. Okay, so you have security question and answers, email verification, all this is for multi-factor authentication, right? So you can choose just 1 or 2 or 3 or how many levels you want, depending on the level of security that you would like to impose. Okay, so we have at least 17 different types of authentication techniques, including TOTP and QR code based authentication. Okay, so let me give you an example here. You have 2 groups of employees. Group 1 is your regular users. Group 2 is your administrators. For your regular users, you can maybe have SMS based verification. So after they type in their username and password, which is strengthened using the password policy enforcer, they will then have to overcome the challenge of SMS verification, your regular users. Okay, Now, let's say your administrators are trying to log on to the servers. Okay, when the administrators are trying to log on to the servers, apart from SMS verification, you also want, let's say, RSA secure ID to be enabled for additional security. You can create another policy with the technique, the authentication technique that you deem fit. Okay, this is for logging in, all right? But multi-factor authentication is not just required for logging in. So what if your employees are resetting their password or unlocking their account? Don't they need a multi-factor check there? Yes. So the multi-factor authentication setup for password reset and account unlock is also possible using AAD self-service. So multi-factor authentication at the time of login is taken care of. At the time of reset password or unlocking account is also taken care of. Okay. So what about your endpoints? How do we secure your endpoints then? Okay. So when your users are trying to log into their Windows laptop or Mac laptop or Linux operating system installed laptop, okay, and you can enable MFA there, thereby you're securing their endpoints as well. Okay. What if they are working from home and they connect to Office via VPN? How do you secure VPN access? Well, you can enable MFA for VPN login as well. And again, you can pick and choose the authenticators from the from the list of authenticators that are already available. So let me make it very clear here. We have discussed just 2 points. Point number 1 is strengthening the user passwords using various restrictions here. Point number 2 is strengthening the second layer of authentication using different MFA techniques. Okay, and you can pick and choose the level of MFA techniques, whether it's going to be 1 technique or 2 or 3, depending on their job roles and depending on the resources or data that they're going to access when they are in your organization. Okay, and everything is again mapped to a policy, and you can apply this policy for all your users, or you can apply this policy for a set of users depending on your requirement. Okay. So this is the benefit of AAD self-service when it comes to strengthening your, your credentials. The last item that I'd like to discuss before ending this session is your users in your office will be using a variety of business applications, right? So they'll be using IT management tools. They'll be using a CRM for lead follow-up. They'll be using HR management tools, messaging applications, analytic tools for report, and all kinds of tools, right? So now that you have secured level 1 and level 2 of authentication using passwords and MFA, you can also enable single sign-on for your users for a variety of business applications that you see on the screen. Okay, so let's say your users are using any one of these applications that you're seeing on the screen. We have close to 119 applications that we support for single sign-on. Okay, so instead of your users typing in their username and password every time they are trying to access any one of these applications, if you enable single sign-on through AAD self-service, they will get one-click access to all these applications or to any of these applications that you're seeing on the screen. So we can enable one-click access to Office 365, GoToMeeting, even Azure portals, and a lot of other HR tools as well. Okay, so 3 things: strengthening your passwords, strengthening your second level of authentication, and enabling single sign-on. So these 3 are the core features of AAD Self-Service Plus. Okay, so I'm just going to do a quick recap of what we saw here. Okay, so AAD 360 can help you onboard users. It can also talk to other business applications. It can help you strengthen the authentication process because we have 2 levels of strengthening here. And then it can also help your end users do self-service actions in a very controlled manner. It can help you offboard users and delegate actions to your HR, to your contract employees, so that they don't get direct access to servers. Okay. Now it's time for us to talk about the analytics part. And my good friend and colleague, Harish, is waiting on the line to talk about risk-based analytics and what are the important items that you should be checking when you have a log management system in your office.